So usually I'm talking about sculpt in a more linear way where we just kind of go about making a concept and then just commit to it and start detailing from there. But today I figured we could talk about it in a more exploratory sense. So because of the position of my Wacom, it's not so fluid for me to just reach over and use hotkeys. So it's like annoying. So for that reason, I tend to sculpt for a while and then I'll move my tablet out the way and I'll start doing modeling stuff. And then once I'm modeling, I don't really feel like moving this tablet back over in order to get back to sculpting. So then I'm a mouse guy for the rest of the day. So we're just going to start off jumping into grab the king of all brushes. And let me turn on this Wacom remote. There we go. And if y'all are curious about mapping, we could talk about it sometime, but it's really basic. You know, it's like, I don't even know what buttons there are right now. I should get familiar with my Wacom, which is why I'm doing these videos. So we're just going to start off with my usual, you know, like there's some things I deem safe for demos where, you know, certain explorations I just know can get me to a successful result if I do it in a video. So sometimes I fall prey to certain motifs. So just saying that out loud, you know, usually I always aim for like kind of a humanoid shape, but this time we'll experiment with some variants and just kind of see what we can do to make things a little bit more variated than usual. So, you know, I always start off kind of just building these shapes to just get my bearings. We see that default scrape brush is a scrapist. So let us press Q. I know where Q is on this remote. And we just hit toggle brush, and now we're using basically brush subdivision, which just nicer to me whenever I'm in Dyntopo. Over the course of actually working on that robot course, I was checking out the blend files, and at the time I was dealing with the sculpt, it was like 50 megabytes, and then you know, at the time I applied decimation, it jumped down to 8. So I'm always thinking about Polycount and file bloat, and I worry that sometimes having a humongous blend file results in Blender not being able to open. You know, it's silly, but I'm just superstitious. So I think in the actual video I discussed using add primitive from Hardops. However, Blender's masking and extrusion is also quite good whenever it comes to adding extensions onto something. So now that we actually have a mesh, which is mainly my goal at this point, I'm just establishing a mesh existing because it's fair. Dang, I need to stop hitting clear mask, invert mask. This is why I probably need like a mini keyboard out in front of me, but then I would really just start integrating some modeling and sculpting. So we're looking at it. And we're going to activate move and just move this out. And there's no reason that I'm actually using this workflow over the other or anything like that. It's just I want to show just some versatility whenever it comes to using these Blender tools because they are just great. However, I am going to hit voxelize from here because the actual option for voxelize is here, which is just too far. Like, you know, like I always joke in previous content, you know, tablets will give you some upper body abdominal strength sculpting long enough. So I got some friends that are like purely on the tablet, and, you know, I wouldn't be picking fights with them. You know, those tablet guys, they'll break you like a Wacom. They'll break you like Wacom breaks their own drivers. I'm sorry, just had to make that joke. So we're just going to start building our shape. And, you know, I do a lot of full body work as well. Like I have tons and tons of files of just like bot hand. I was meaning to actually do a video about doing a robot hand, but because we're in subdivision month, I'm gonna have to re-strategize its completion so we can fit it within the mission criteria for this month. So we're just building shapes, and the more geometry that I have, just the more base I have. And really, I don't even care about the form itself because with grab, you just have so much versatility in moving that you can just get in and just get control at any time. So, you know, this is like the typical archetype that I always go for in these demonstrations because, like I said, it's safe. I'm just aware that I can lock in some planes, I can expand on those planes, and we can get everything under control and take it to a fine result. I don't have to worry about drawing concepts in between or asking people for advice, which is also a thing. Sometimes I'll just show someone something, just be like, hey man, what should I do? They're like, burn it. I'm like, wait, burn it? This is a in progress thing. So now we're just basically converting the draw brush into a dam brush, which is, one of these brushes has to be sacrificed. Dam is pretty, draw is pretty good on its own, just with default settings, but for our needs, we just need to have control. And I'm just drawing random shapes, just doodling. Let's decimate a couple of times, just to really simplify things, and we can just continue being random with it. So really at this point, I'm just trying to just establish any plane. So we could use draw brush. Draw sharp is the only brush that does not adhere by Dyntopo rules. So every now and then I make the mistake of hitting draw sharp, and it's just so mean. But I bet it's a whiz for people using multi-res. I might find out sometime when I'm willing to let my blend file get to 400 megabytes. But I like to keep my files in a format where I can send them to my friends or drop them on Patreon or whatever the case may be. Just humongous files. It's terrible. You better be packing some decals in there. So like I said, we're still just fighting shapes, just really establishing this shape very quickly, just getting in there, doing the basic stuff that you've seen me do a million times. So we'll go in, start taking some area out, and really just get random with it, because I always talk about hallucinations in the mesh. Sometimes I don't feel I do as good a job capitalizing on all the hallucinations I see, giving them a satisfactory resolution, letting them follow all the way through. But I try. And also for every hallucination, I try to create subsequent hallucinations. So just thinking back on the model I did last, I always just think back on my last model and I'm like, how can I change it just slightly, just to try combination 307.2, just to find out, maybe this combo will give me something like, this one, little visor, instead of the typical ones where I have just a big hypervisor, we're just going with like something smaller. But anytime I'm drawing and I don't give a character eyes, I think I'm thinking villain in my head. I'm thinking faceless villain / iconic hero. Those are like the two paradigms, at least to me. There's the hero whose face is very obvious, he has an iconic look, and then there's the villain who just faceless unless you're Sephiroth. I always think about Sephiroth too, but not integrating him into my work. But getting a call from Tetsuo Nomura. We are using him right now. But that sequel will come out, Final Fantasy VII 2. I'll be curious as to what they do with it. So we're just being random. Blender Sculpt is so special. I wouldn't go out and say, Blender's got a sculpt worth checking out. I almost wouldn't even say that. I would say, if you're in Blender, check out some sculpt. But, I definitely wouldn't say leave your current application for it, because, I don't know, surface control is such a gambit. Like, sometimes I can control the surface of the mesh so good and get like a really unique result where everything just looks good and it's like, wow, do I even need to retopo this? Just kidding. You always need to retopo a Dyntopo mesh. Never try to take one of these to the finish line. However, there's a guy, I think Yosef, he will take a Dyntopo, but he's sculpting pretty girls. That's just, once you smooth it just right, just enough, get all those lumps out, it's just a pretty girl. Unless, you can still be pretty with lumps. So let us undo. We're just talking about lumps and pretty girls. Just kidding. We're going to stabilize stroke, and with stabilized stroke, I just lower the radius. I could probably also mess with the factor, but this is like the only brush that gives me a degree of control. So now we are just kind of drawing and just using guidelines and just being random. So the next thing is we want to just basically jump into grab and just start pulling things and just really think about the form, because I see all these invisible planes that can just be capitalized on. Like, for example, if we wanted to kind of just triangulate the head, we can do that because we now have this, like, I don't know, invisible plane forming. And in order to show it, I'm just going to pinch and drag the surface and smooth this out. And that's literally the plane that I saw forming. Like, if you didn't see it, call an optometrist. No, I'm kidding. I'm in no position to tell anyone to talk to optometrists. That's why I reference blurry images. They just match me. I'm like, all right, this image is about as good as I am. Now let's zoom all the way. No, I'm kidding. But we are just getting in, just having some fun, you know, really warming up. I haven't been awake very long, maybe a little bit, but, you know, still haven't had a meal yet today. You know, I always say polygons for breakfast because it is polygons for breakfast. I don't mess around. You know, just a little doodle here and there. You know, you don't have to be so serious about 3D like I probably sound. Just get yourself a little doodle in. Just time boxing, you know. Just find out what you got going on. Just get some thoughts out of your head, you know. The goal isn't even so much to practice. It's probably to, you know, me and my friends, we always talk about the blender in our heads, you know, that because we use so much blender, there's like a blender in our minds, you know, and it doesn't crash as much, but it still does. But you could just kind of visualize what you're doing. And in a way, that's another form of practice, like visualizing success, you know, not to get all self-helpy here, but you definitely want to just spend time pondering, you know, like sometimes before a task, I'll be like, yo, I need you to ponder this, you know, just think about it. It's not a task yet, but, you know, just think about how you do it, you know, if you had to do it, and then think about how you have to do it later. You know, just a little preparatory. So, you know, whenever I'm away from the computer, I'm always thinking like, man, I should have tried this shape combination or this shape combination, or I should try masking more, which is my new thing now. I'm now going to try to mask more to unlock the potential of masking, because masking is so powerful over in ZBrush. And so, you know, in Blender, I just never talk about it. Not saying it's a new thing or something. It's just been there. But, you know, with Sculpted now having like transform tools and stuff, looking at my time, we're only 13 minutes in and we're still on our first one. We're going to have to pick up the pace and start jumping on to the second ones where we start kind of going for some slightly different shapes. But, you know, like I said, I just get in with grab and mask and just play with surfaces. I wish we could hide the mask, you know, still have the mask available. Let us clear the mask and we're just looking at what we received. And I bet there's an easier way to deal with what we're about to be looking at. But, you know, my favorite is to just pinch one side, pinch the other side, pinch one side, pinch the other side. And we just do this all the way around. And, you know, behind the scenes, we're actually defining the geometry. Because if we just raw dog smoothed it, it'd be game over. The geometry would just cripple. And we don't want that. So, you know, especially with Dyntopo, I keep things really rough. You know, like I've re-topoed so many meshes that I've realized that, you know, just enough of an indication of a hallucination sometimes can guide my topology. So you could definitely be getting in here and trying to be more precise, because then you're on your own time. But it's not so necessary, especially if you have a game plan ahead of you. Like if you know what you're about to be doing, then you can kind of work with that in mind. Like if I was thinking, hey, I'm going to be subdividing this mesh and taking it through a subdivision workflow and retopologize in that direction, then, you know, I'd approach things a little bit differently with some of my shape construction and think about like overlaps. But, you know, we're just getting in and just creating our very first version, which is, you know, the typical, you know, the MX daily is what I call it. You know, I will, like, you know, I've mentioned it in many videos, I will practice something over and over until I get it right. Over and over and over and over and over. You know, like I did that video of that nut. I did like 14 nuts that were saved, which means I probably did a total of like 50 nuts because, you know, at some point they became, I got the idea down and just, you know what, I'm not saving this anymore. But when the topology was okie dokie, or I felt that significant progress was shown, yeah, I'll power save it. So we're just getting in here. You know, I've been really trying to figure out ways to integrate stuff like this into a design, just like something like that, without looking very comical and then making it work. So, I mean, I have some sculpts where I've been trying that, like just like adding like fierce teeth and stuff, but it just never ever works out. So, you know, with our body, we're so undefined, and also because of all this in the face, we are heavy. So, you know, how heavy are we? Let's decimate once, and then we'll turn on statistics and imagine that times 4, and that's where we were. So we were probably at around 500,000. So, you know, best advice I can give people with sculpting is know your computer, especially if you're using Dyntopo. Like if you think you're just going to get in and just sculpt all willy-nilly and just not look at your Polycount because Blender decided to hide it for some reason. Maybe you think the whole world's using a i7 at least, or i5, but, you know, I needed that info. I mean, it's in the bottom of my window now because I right-clicked it and put it back, which is how you get back your scene statistics. But, you know, Blender, Blender be Blender, man. I'm telling you, you just gotta slap your forehead and just say, those crazy guys over there. It's not even a critical type of attitude, you know, because Blender will definitely give you the wishes. Like one of these days, we're going to look up and there's going to be a parallax occlusion mapper in Blender. It might take, I'm thinking 4 years, maybe 2, maybe 1.5. But, you know, Eevee has no system to show displacement, which is just strange because displacement is such a integral part of workflow. So, you know, with not having it, it's just, it definitely makes a very strong argument for cycles. So for this part, I've just been looking at people on Twitter doing just so. Let's change this to 3. 3 is hardcore, guys. They don't even let you go to 3. We are just going to go to 3 and maybe pull out something like that and really just smooth it in before I get the urge to undo it. But if you saw the sculpt video, you know that undo, it don't do. You know, sometimes it just happens. I'm telling you, Blender be Blender. You just got to put into perspective that, you know, 3D software be hard. It be hard. So, you know, issues happen. I don't even fly off the handle at bugs. You know, I might drop a few F-bombs, but, you know, the N-word completely not even used. Sorry, I had to make at least one joke about it. There's so many N-words now. It might not even be the one you're thinking of, but we're just getting in here, having fun. Director tapped me on the shoulder, said no more of that. Just kidding. So just building up shapes, you know, I always go for like kind of these humanoid, just at least blocks to just establish the foundations. So we just have something, anything to jump off of. And also, you know, another thing that I get to talk about with bus is, you know, Blender has this thing called something. I mean, if I could find it in this list of long names, like just like Santa's list over here, fulfilled by Pablo. God bless Pablo. So let us choose line project. And I'm going to draw a line, and it's going to be the wrong direction because every time I use line project, it's the wrong direction. You know, either way, you're going to get the wrong direction. So this thing is like clip curve in ZBrush. But let me tell you, I love this thing. So let us press Q, or let's not. Let's just get in and just try to pinch this up. You know, whenever meshes get crazy, I just get pinching. That was a problem over at Blizzard. Too much pinching. But we're just getting in and just cleaning it up just slightly. So now we have just kind of a nice triangle shape in it. Sometimes I'll even come from the side because, you know, we're just having fun with Sculpt. I'll probably come back and start talking about, you know, robot arms and stuff very soon. But, you know, starting out is the bust. You know, just getting in, just having fun with the bust, because, you know, all the additional details just get a little overwhelming. So it's not even so much for me. I look at this as like a kind of entry model for the users and getting into Sculpt, because you can find out a lot about Blender this way and then expand into adding on additional parts and all that. But let's take this head, mask it. And does Blender have the ability to blur a mask? Oh, it does. Smooth the mask, smooth the mask. And there's hotkeys for this, I bet. And we are going to invert the mask. And let's just pretend like we're some ZBrushes. We're just going to get in and rotate. And we got, you know, that smooth transition. So now we use move. And because there's a big gorilla hand in the way, God, I gotta look over the screen in order to see it. You guys might have saw my hair. You know, I'm showing my bald spot to you guys. Let us jump over to scrape, and we are just going to clear the mask. So let's also press Q and decimate, just because we want to just keep things cheap. Let's also decimate again because I'm being real cheap. You know, we're going to McDonald's on this cheap level. So object mode, and I'm going to have to reach over the keyboard, look for Shift D, and we'll just move over this first piece. Geez, GX. I can't. If I can't see the keyboard, I can't type. You put a blind. That was one of my things with VR. You know, trying to use a computer in VR. It's like, dang it, I can't type if I can't see my keyboard. I want to just have my camera on. So we're just moving this over just so we have just kind of our original, because, you know, it'll just continue on from here, and we're just going to keep messing with variants. And maybe with those variants, we don't want to negotiate on our subdivision. Also, I'm going to press numpad / so we go in local mode, because nobody's got time for that. And so T panel with T to open the T panel. And let's now get in and just start making some variants on this, because the mesh is relatively simple, which means we can literally grab and have our way with it. There was a joke made a while back about a robot called 9T, which was like going to be like this 90-degree pipe that was like wearing a jacket. It still is on my list to do as like a type of character, but it was just going to be someone that had like a really long face. So, you know, don't know why I jumped to object mode. I'm a spaz. We are going to just press Q and just hit voxelize and see if we voxelize just what's masked. Nope, it unmasks and it voxelizes everything. That be life. So let's roll with the punches. You know, just because you don't get what you want, you know, I don't even tap undo. Undo is like a lottery ticket, except what you win sometimes is a trip to the desktop. So sometimes you got to really think about undo. Do I really do I need to undo so bad because it's affecting a save? I don't know. I'm being a lunatic there. Your philosophies may differ, but we're just going to get in and just work on kind of a longer one. You know, I've been looking at what happened about MDK. You know, that guy had a really long face, but we are just going to get in with line project and draw a line the wrong way twice. And we can't tap Alt to do any like ZBrushy stuff. So if you're looking for that, you're going to be disappointed. But the fact that this exists is, that's the way I see it in Blender. If Blender adds it to the program itself, it's part of the lore. It's going to get better. All it can do is get better. It can't get worse. I mean, name something that got worse. Never mind. Stop naming stuff. Name other stuff that got. No, I'm kidding. But Blender rarely gets worse on things. If anything, they get better. Like recently, performance has been a topic of discussion, and I'm less complaining. I mean, I've been doing all these subdivision studies. Subdivision is, this thing still sets at 3. Let's set it to 1. We're in here just literally sawing this guy. So maybe something like this will bring it down, because going all the way around is just a cliche in itself. And I'm always telling guys, I'm like, try something hard. Try, at least struggle. Make something you struggle on in your content. If you're going to make a series on something, at least one part that's like, oh man, I really wish I didn't have to deal with this. So I kind of aim all my videos around it now, because I want users to be well equipped for their Blender adventures. But also, I'm not going to BS you. I'm not going to say, hey, uninstall ZBrush. First of all, if you bought a license, you should continue mastering ZBrush. If you didn't buy a license, well, I think this 3D paradigm is you have to pirate software in order to master the software, to get a job, to afford the software. It's like a big conundrum, but it's kind of like being a tool guy and needing tools to work on vehicles to afford tools. I don't know. Maybe I don't know anything about tools. I barely know what a nut is, so what do I know? We're just getting in and just sculpting, just having a fun old time, enjoying some unfiltered MX dialogue where I'm bound to go off topic at some point and begin talking about something irrelated. However, I'm listening to some house music, and it centers me. I'm just focused on the goal at hand. Also, we got to do a lot of variants. So in order to do that successfully, I got to really focus. Otherwise, we're going to be making sculpts that just look craptacular, which will result in haters, which just makes my day longer. Leave me alone. This video was free. But no, I mean, I have to mention about ZBrush, because I see a lot of excitement in the comments, like, yeah, the sculpt's the best ever. It's like, yeah, it's pretty good, but I mean, I could go on ZBrush and talk about surface control there, but the conversations are so short because of the brush modifier, because super pinch, because H polish, because oh my god, I might be using Blender because it's hard mode, but also my workflow has really simplified. I could go in ZBrush, use like 100 brushes, using an insert brush and all that stuff. Blender's getting its own insert brush now. Still don't need it, but you could really get in there and do some serious damage. So there is never a reason to drop a program that you paid for that they're not even asking for more money on, in order to just jump over to a program that's not asking you for any money either. So it's a win-win. As with all tools, my philosophy is add it to your belt. How many people learn Japanese and just abandon their native tongue, just completely start thinking in that? I don't know multiple languages, but I assume that people just add it to their belt. So I feel that it's a special skill to be able to just open any 3D program and begin using it. And that's my goal, to just be able to bounce between them all and not even have to be like, darn, navigation. I mean, these navigations are strangely different between each other, so it does piss me off, definitely. But at the end, when you just stop complaining, you just get in there, pretend you're a robot. Bloop, bloop, bleep, bloop, brah. So we're just really working this. I'm going to make this work, this boxy formation. But to do that, we got to put shapes that are just not going to be fun to subdivide or turn into quad topology, because I'm not doing that today. We're just concepting. But at this point, it should be well established that there's probably not any mesh that comes across my screen that I couldn't convert if I had to. Not a single mesh. Even meshes I thought I couldn't do, we're done. Like all those cylinders being merged, I don't know. That is, I plan to come back and do one with spheres, but at this point, I'm just kicking a dead horse. You guys are well aware that y'all can merge anything. I mean, of course, topology permitting, perimeter assured, but that's just Blender basics. You know, that should be your fallback. Like, oh my God, I can't do this using a tool. Well, I'm gonna get in and do it using just vanilla techniques, because at the end of the day, the client doesn't care. Yo, dog, my tool wasn't working. Well, I was about to say something terrible that I would expect a client to say, but excuses, no excuses. That's why you got to understand, you know, the background of things. You know, I try to do these videos where I try to be really explanatory, and I probably come off long-winded because I'm like explaining the behind the scenes. It's because I feel that understanding the foundation helps you know, like, okay, when this isn't working one day, because I'll have gotten eaten by cave people or whatever will happen to me. You know, have gotten busted in a bad dog swap. You know, feds will come get me. But whatever case, you know, you got to have a fallback. However, my goal with our tools is to build them in a way where they go on in perpetuity. I mean, of course, the API keeps our work just going. I always remind the team that's job security. I'm like, look, every time Blender breaks you and I say you got to fix it, you know, that's your job right there. You just got this maintenance job forever, because you never know what Blender's going to do. They're like a Tasmanian devil. They might spin out and break the depth graph again, which breaks everything, you know. So just fun times. It's like, dang, we can't be down for 24 hours. So we're just still keeping our randomness, you know, still expanding on the base that we had before. You know, whenever it comes to smooth is like this big equalizer of mesh to me. Like, especially with the subdivide option, like as I'm rubbing across areas, it's smoothing the mesh, but it's also just equalizing it, just bringing it to something special. Same with pinch, all these brushes. Like Dyntopo supported means that, you know, when you grab it, it's going to start affecting it on a mesh level. So we are going to just experiment with this one, get it to a completion goal, and then from there duplicate it and try again. But, you know, variance is definitely one of my favorite call center games. You know, when I would be answering calls, I would just be duplicating meshes, messing with a version off on the side, just really experimenting with how bad people would be wasting time on the phones, because they're like, I'm a call and waste their time. It's like, I'm mastering Blender right now. Please continue to waste my time, because while you're saying, herp-a-derp, I don't know where my modem is, I am just choking this computer to death because I don't have a GPU in it, and I'm using Blender Render as my render engine. So those were kind of good times for me. Like, I really feel they tempered the person that you currently see before you now. I was about to do, you know, sometimes in my head, something will go off saying, hey, you've done that maneuver like 60 times. And I'm like, oh, thanks. And so now we're going to try something different. But like I said, when it comes to Blender brushes, they are a strange control. Like, if you can control them even as good as I am, you have a right to be telling people to probably leave ZBrush, but you still shouldn't be telling people to do that, because that program is a freaking behemoth. Like, I love ZBrush. ZBrush is my second love. If Blender ever just didn't work out, I would just become the hardest ZBrusher. But ZBrush doesn't have the ability to just touch a mesh, just really just touch it. You know, you can get it with ZModeler and you can like move points sort of, but you know, there's no grid displaying, so it just feels strange. I mean, I like ZModeler too, but right clicking to bring up every option known to man. Actually, I was about to say, why would you do that? And then I just remembered Blender does that. You could just right click and bring up like almost every option on the fly. So good idea, ZBrush. So we're just working in the back, you know, just randomness. You know, because it's a bus, we don't have to really think about it. However, I could probably come back and also talk about extending bus, because that's the thing. I'll do a bus, get it to a point in which I love it, and then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to add a chest, a couple of arms, 16 legs. Just kidding. I'm not making spider peds. But yeah, you just extend upon it, because if it has a nice cutoff, it'll just slap right on something. I mean, you could be building bodies that perfectly take this stuff. It's 3D. You're playing with Legos here. So let's see. We are 35 minutes in, and we're on variant 2, which means that I suck. Like, I am wasting your time. Why are you watching this video? You can go ahead and exit. But if you're still watching, let us continue. And we're just pinching. Pinching is such an equalizer, but the circle is cruel. It's like a God ray from the sun. So you got to really treat that circle nice. I do a lot of scaling it up and down just on the fly to really get the circle to be either God ray from the sun annihilating everything, or just a simple corner suggestion reminder thing, like just reminding this corner, hey, you don't have to sit there and be so alias. So here we're looking at kind of our horse face creation. I actually think I pulled it out way too far. So if we were just been weird with it, we could just grab this and move it. But I look over at my Polycount and I'm like, ooh, I'm at 700K. So that means that we cannot just move it like that, because it'll just be a little bit choky. So I'm on an i9 with like 64 gigs of RAM. Whenever it comes time to replace this computer, I'll probably go with AMD again and actually give them a try, because the last time was very strange. You know, that computer, that last AMD was the only computer that ever made me cry, so I'm not going to get into that. But also, not literally cry, but I did literally question my life, like, and career over that computer, because it was just choking. It would choke like, never mind, I'm not going to get into it. It didn't happen to any of my friends either, which made me even madder. So I felt like I was sabotaged, but it was definitely not sabotage. That's insanity. It was the federal government, you know, water filters. So let us wrap on this particular one, and let's go back to object, and we can press / to come out of local. And so this is now just our second variant, just kind of playing around. So I'm going to go in and maybe hit it with another decimate, because I'm merciless. I will decimate you. You know, I may not re-topologize you, but I'll dang sure decimate you. So now that we got it down to something like 47, like the lower we keep these numbers, the more we can just party, because otherwise we got to get to a wrap once we start sitting at a milli on the screen. So pressing G, X, and just so hard to see over my keyboard. So let's just take this back into local, and we are going to go back into sculpt, numpad period to focus, and let us, well, it's already decimated, so that means we can do that, and we can do that, and we can do all of that, and really just cause ourselves to have to rethink a lot of stuff just by having to smooth. I mean, we don't have to smooth. We could be playing off of this stuff, but I don't know. I do this seriously a lot just to see where sculpt will let me take it, and exactly how quickly I can eat a surface with scrape. You know, these are the questions that I have. So right now I'm actually thinking of this music video by, I think, Cascade, that featured a person wearing a cube head. So, you know, we're doing all these like kind of cube head models, but I actually refer to this as the slump line in my personal studies, because there's a particular character I did called Slump that was like a robotic lizard hybrid, who had this kind of shape form to it. So I don't know, I just associate it with characters. In fact, the version that is demonstrated currently in tutorials is called Veldox as a style, which has been going on since the Threadox line, basically, because Threadox is a villain, which I should have done his counterpart Indox, which was basically like an Intel version, but like I have this imaginary universe that all these characters fit in. So I mean, that's not always directly specified in these videos whenever I'm working on character stuff, but I mean, there's always a character, and sometimes I'm actually chasing the same character over and over. Especially on these villain designs, like I feel like there's like this perfect villain. You're not gonna be able to show me a picture of it and be like, yeah, that's it. In fact, show me a picture that will definitely make it not it, because a picture of it exists already that wasn't made by me. Like I said, I'm a weirdo, so just a journey of self-discovery. But you know, long ago, a great artist said that you know, universalizing your work kind of brings it together. So I always consider everything as part of a universe, the Xeon verse, you know, the MX verse, whatever. So here I am falling back to old habits. Let us break those habits by doing something like that. Let's do something like that. Let's do something like that, and let's do something like that, and let's do something like that. And you're looking at me and you're like, but MX, no. No, I'm kidding. You're probably looking at this like, what are you doing? I mean, this is another aspect of my studies, is I will just kind of get in, trash a mesh, and just see if I can clean it up. Which, spoiler alert, yes, you can clean up literally any surface, as long as you don't have holes in it. If you've got holes in it, you probably need to pinch it to oblivion, remesh it, maybe voxelize it, and you're back in business, maybe. Otherwise, you should go in edit mode, grab everything around the hole, scale it to 0, and then get back to work. Sometimes I do that. Sometimes you'll catch me just scaling a whole bunch of nonsense in edit mode to 0. So we're just getting in here, just having fun. You know, we could always voxelize. Wait, sorry, I didn't mean voxelize. We can always get in and decimate, just to simplify it. We don't even have to simplify it. You know, like I said, I'm just being weird and experimental with what I'm doing right now. But this is Sculpt for you, you know, just getting in and just playing with what you have at your disposal. So the hotkey for using voxelization is Control-R or Shift-R, with Control-R being to show you the little grid for dealing with voxelization. So if you're just needing to ever use voxelization, it's just there in Blender. It's not like associated with us or anything. My goal is always to just make sure the options relevant are in front of you. So that's why we support voxelization in Sculpt, because HardOps is more than a hard surface toolkit. It's a workflow assistant. Our goal is to assist you in your workflow for your entire journey from beginning to end. You know, from even setting up lights, to dealing with empties, to configuring your modifiers, to building your models. So, you know, looking at a head with this advanced of a shape, I get flashbacks. I look at a lot of people's attempts online, and especially when they base it on my work, and I'm like, oof, they're referencing old stuff. They should not, because nowadays I definitely give the heads a lot more consideration. Like I'm like thinking of either a human being inside of it, or having enough CPU, or it being able to be worn by a human for impersonation. You know, maybe we need to impersonate a human as a robot, or impersonate a robot as a human to get in. You know, maybe it's a stealth robot mission. You just never know. So with this one also, we are going to play with the neck size a little bit, because after it was pointed out to me that I was making necks just way too long, I started making them much shorter. But you know, I'd be seeing these people out there running the streets with their long necks, just looking great, just elegant long necks, and admittedly, I'm jealous. So we're gonna give our boy some neck. We're also gonna rotate his head for pride purposes. you know, on some principal sans-ish. So we're going to grab and choose mask, clear mask. And, you know, I still stand by Goku being a, you know, galaxy destroying utter buffoon. But, you know, we'll see him come back and finish Granola, won't we? So we're just Dragon Ball and their fill in names. When will they stop? Granola, gas, tofu. They're just not even trying. They're just getting these names out of just grocery aisles. You know, one day there's gonna be someone called Hershey Kisses and Reese's Bar in the Dragon Ball lore. Super villains, you know, super powerful, stronger than Freezer and Cooler. Jeez, just saying it out loud. So, because we're just sculpting and talking randomly, you know, another thing I'll say off topic that's just completely irrelated. I spent a lot of time following dragon tubers, like not like a lot of time, but it's just a hobby. Like, you know, Blender's a community with its own like eccentricities, which I'm very into, but I'm also into the eccentricities that happen in other communities, which are also very interesting. For example, not to be the guy to talk to y'all about DSP, but man, have y'all ever heard of this guy DSP? He is a guy with so many enemies that he has his own like community over it. And I don't know, I've always found that an anomaly. You know, when you got so many haters, you got a community. I would actually just go offline. Like if I found out there was a anti-MX task force, I would probably have to abide by their commands. You know, life's too short to be dealing with internet weirdos. But, you know, maybe it'll be someone from the Freezer Corps, just like, how dare you insult our Emperor Freezer? Well, he deserves it. He killed Krillin that one time. But, you know, I guess it was to push Goku over the edge. You know, you're just lucky he didn't go Ultra Instinct on you that day. You would have been like, what is going on with these Saiyans? You know, on Namek. I always think about that in Dragon Ball. Like, what it would be like if the villains came in a different order. Like, if Vegeta came to Earth first instead of Raditz. Like, the Earth would be over. You know, to show, like, or like, what if Majin Buu arrived instead of Raditz? You know, like, or Kid Buu. Like, Kid Buu just stepped out of a portal and just brought up that big red ball that he used to destroy the Earth. You know, they would just, you would see Goku cry. You know, tears of a man. You know, ain't so plucky now, are you, punk? No, I'm kidding. But yeah, even the Kais would just, they wouldn't want to get involved. But I'm pretty sure that concept's been explored. Anytime I start working on plating on the front, I always think of like monkeys. I mean, I'm not trying to. It's just the patterns just make me think of it sometimes. But, you know, just having these varying levels of complexes, like you see me sculpt it, but in my head I'm thinking, all right, so when this is retopoed, I'm going to extrude this in and put some grates here. This part I'm going to have fold inside like one of these numbers on it, just for some like extra detail on the surface. So it goes without saying that some of the simplicity that I'm giving on the surface, like I just look at open planes as like a buffet. You know, I can just do whatever I want with that thing when the right time comes, of course. You know, when there's food on the buffet, you don't want to go to the buffet while they're putting the food out. You'll look pathetic. So you got to wait until the food's there and maybe a few kids are at the buffet. That way you can just push them out the way and it's just not that weird. Like, move out of the way, young, and you don't know nothing about lobster rolls. Which, just the thought of that makes me very hungry and has shortened the lifespan of this video because, you know, if I didn't mention it, I literally woke up, had a breakfast drink, and now we are working. It just be like that sometimes. Like, I'm just so crazy about time and efficiency. Like, I should just literally breakfast eggs and toast it. Just make some, but No time to waste. So we can just pull shapes around, you know, like often whenever I'm working, I'm thinking of like the character creator on Phantasy Star Online and how much versatility they had with the characters. Like, I mean, I never created Don Hughcast characters, so, you know, don't get it twisted. Hughcast for life. I was playing that game not long ago because I got Game Shark codes to make every box a red box. So we're just red boxing every enemy. In fact, just thinking about that makes me want to exit and just run through and kill Dark Falls and Gal Griffin and just gather some red boxes. You know, I'm not even at Dr. Montague's research where I can turn these animal parts into weapons, but I can go to it, turn a Rappy's arm into a weapon. Just never mind. If you don't know what Phantasy Star is, you're probably like, what on earth is this freaking sculptor talking about? Get back to sculpting, monkey. You know, and I would say that's something Frieza would say. Don't be calling people monkeys. That's racist. So we're continuing on, just talking about monkeys and Saiyans and Frieza. You know, long live the Galactic Frieza Empire. And so for this area, we see that we got an undesirable dip. So the only way we're going to be able to get that under control is grabbing McGee. I mean, not pretty, but, you know, this is that type of surface control that is truly the difference for me between Blender and ZBrush. Like, I'm pretty sure some Blender lunatic will say, oh man, you just flick these settings that, you know, Blender conveniently always has the settings you need. They're just never in front of your face. But surface control is just a struggle. And so there was a time when I felt 2.8 had better surface control than ever, and then it went backwards. And we're still living in that backwards. And that's why we're in this alternative universe where Scrape is my boy, and we never ever talk about Flatten ever again. You know, don't bring up Flatten to me if you see me on the streets. Don't say, hey man, what about Flatten? You know, I don't want to hear it. So we're just working this shape, just really thinking about how we're going to take this to somewhere successful. However, we have got 274,000 verts of accountability to deal with. So we want things to continue to be fluid. So I'm going to decimate once for you guys and another one for my mother. And always decimate your meshes. Just kidding, you don't always have to decimate it, but you know, if we look at this and question, like, why does this fail? You know, Batman, why do you lie? We're going to just alright, so we got grab. Let's smooth it out. Alright, it was just making me look like a fool. So, you know, people always ask why I go for like certain looks in videos. It's like, I just know what works. Like, I mean, I'm not saying I know what works. I know what works for me. Like, I just know that certain types of gestures just flow right, you know? Like, if I start failing, man, I just start thinking of skulls. And boy, that helmet will get back on track. I mean, even in a morbid way, I could be thinking about being dead. God dang. All right, pinch is what you need. When you grab, when you mean to grab pinch, it's a bad day. But we're just getting in here, looking at the clock. We're almost to an hour. But yeah, where was I? So, you know, whenever the design starts going wayward, I start thinking of skulls, and it'll just start getting under control, you guys, I'm saying. So I should start thinking of other shapes. Like, I start thinking of like Halo helmets, but there's like so many Halo helmets now that there's no longer an iconic helmet. I mean, and the Samuroid is such a cliche now that, you know, I was going to do like a Duke's version of a Samuroid, but it is seriously like part of the general design lexicon now to make something a samurai, which, you know, still sounds cool. You know, even as I talk about it now, talking smack about it, I'm very tempted onto the idea now of making a Samuroid mech. because the techniques are just would be so straightforward. You know, you put that little frill in the back of the neck, put a katana in his hand, you know, put some flower leaves, and you got yourself a stew going. So we're just, you know, whenever I look at this, I'm always thinking of like breathing apparatus. But I don't know, I just like putting these sort of things on a design. So we are just still having fun, just pinching, really thinking hard about what we want our lunch to be. And so let's, you know, there's a thing in ZBrush where you can just draw a clip circle and it will just work. Let's see what lasso trim's like. All right, let's never talk about lasso trim again. All right, and I'm just really pulling back, thinking about my life. Just kidding, I'm not. We're going to first decimate it, which means that we now have the ability to go back to grab, and we can just grab and just start playing with proportions, because this is just a variant. You know, it doesn't matter. We can pick the winner. We can mesh the two best winners together. So this one is kind of going for how to concept a robot in Blender, where I had a very narrow neck, I remember. And so, you know, whenever it comes to necks, I just work in some shapes, you know, work a shape to support said shape, you know, maybe to really elevate it from the surface, and we can just begin tightening things up. So at this point, it's just a matter of me locating pinch. As I see all the options, I just get blinder and blinder. It's terrible. But we are just going to get in here and just really tighten up what we have so we can talk of moving on. But first, we got to refine this frontal area and, of course, the rear area, because part of my new thing with these busts is I'm trying to give more care to the back area as well, to just study it harder. So no backs left unturned. You know, this robot's got back. And we'll draw this piece around, which that is I would call that a cliche with me. So let's bring in a second one, lessening it, and then we can add an edge there, bring a counter edge to that, and just really start working something interesting into this surface to make it tell a more interesting tale. So something like that, you know, really just being random whenever it comes to sculpt. You know, I always put a few of these little scoops in because it'll just get things looking good. And then, of course, we can always just make it tight, make it right. Just get in and smooth it up. And the thing about this is, while you're seeing me today talk about flatten, and you see me today talk about these brushes that I like so much, like except for grab. Grab should never change. If grab changes, you'll see me on that thread saying amen. But grab dough, you can't just take grab away. Like, I would pay a ransom for grab. But I welcome any changes that come to it, because it can only get better as long as they don't change the curve of how it influences the mesh whenever you're using it. It has just uses so much further than just sculpting, but nothing exceeding moving. It's just, you can move mountains with it, which sounds sarcastically funny to say, but yeah, you know, grab brush, you can move mountains. So we're just getting in here, using the wrong brush, really starting to get over on time. We've only made like 3 variants, but we're just kind of just being random with sculpt. And you know, we haven't even talked about like kitbashing, right? Like the way we can just add elements additional to this that would be a pain to sculpt. Like I wouldn't sculpt like a hose assembly. Instead, I would just place it on the sculpt and then just sculpt a mesh around it in order to basically make it work. So for example, like let's get in here and just choose that we no longer want this to be held to the same standards as the rest of this. And same thing with this area. We cut it off. It's now on its own standards, and maybe something like that. And just to show you like the type of person I am with sculpt and the type of approaches you can have when it comes to just having a fun time with it, because we're just in here just doodling and talking. And if I wasn't talking, I'd be studying even harder. I would be locking down a design and actually taking it wherever I want it to go. So before we start having fun with this, let us finish what we have going on. For the backs, I used to just have it just end like so, but now I am trying to be a little bit more indicative of some of the assembly systems that would go into this. So, instead it would be double layered, maybe triple layered with like a trim going all the way around it. So, I mean, right now it's just lines to you guys. It's just blurry, nonsense lines, but we can make it work. All we gotta do is just believe in ourselves. Just get in there and, of course, scale our brush down whenever we need something fine. And that was a mistake, but we're just going to play off of it and say, yeah, guys, I meant to do that. Meant to give it a little inset there. So let's do the same thing here. We'll cut it short, which will just make it very awkward for this area, having to nudge its way through. We'll perform a cut line there, and we're just really just being random with this. But like I say, during the process of re-topology, I get a second chance at not only resurfacing it, but also redesigning it. So a lot of the time I will just kind of lay things in real basic, because sculpt just gets weirder and weirder the more you try to get intimate with it, or at least for me. A better sculptor probably fare much better. Like right here, I'm trying to actually smooth this geo, but I'm having to beat it with scrape first in order to kind of equalize the geometry so that it can be smooth without volume reduction, and we're still dealing with a little bit of volume reduction. So surface control is just a struggle, but as long as pinches and being psychologically abusive, it's just very physically abusive to a mesh, we are good to go. So let us come out of local and just look at all of our results so far. So just kind of just getting in there doodling. We actually gave this guy like a humongous head. I think it's because we based him off of him. So let us just go to object. Actually, let's go back to sculpt mode. And I'm going to press Q. And we'll choose decimate. Decimate again. And let's actually get in here and see what's going on. So I feel like the head is humongous, like we were doing like a chibi version. So because the mesh is under our control, we can literally grab this thing like a cartoon. And I'm just dealing with it from the side, just not even giving a hoot. And we look at it from the front and we realize we probably should begin giving it a very strong hoot. So maybe something like that. We could really angle it if we wanted, something Evangelion style, but let's look at it from this side. And yeah, just such a humongous head on this boy. I don't know if I remember us scaling it up. Don't go back in the video and confirm it. But either way, because of how low this mesh is, we still have a lot of versatility whenever it comes to controlling it. And also, if we had to extend upon it, we are perfectly primed for it. So even at this stage, because of the simplicity, I'm able to make just really large sweeping gestural changes to these max. So I'm going to go back into object mode, and we are going to Shift D, X. Tablet is such a nuisance. So I gotta place this down and take off my robe because it is freaking hot. Oh god. Alright. And let us select the main mesh and go back into sculpt mode. Go back into local mode. Numpad period to focus up on our victim. And let's continue. Alright, so continuing on, it looks like we have enough time for one more edit, so let's power the remote back on. Got distracted for a moment, but let us get back to work. So first thing is I'm going to pull the chin out. We're just going to start yanking things and just really think about what we want to do for this final shape. We are going to just draw a big triangle, because triangles are just so good. And let us fill it in with some clay. Just really just having fun with sculpt. Just kind of creating some random variants. Usually with variants, I will create a very particular level 1 and then use that to base all of them instead of what I'm doing here, which is reducing them to an amount and rebuilding them up, kind of reimagining what would go where. We see how pinch just is a savior at this point in which we're trying to bring two very specific flows together, and smooth also in here, just being a champ. So let us just bring this around to something like that, and from here we can just draw, and our line's a little short compared to before, but whenever I add this detail, I just think in my head Decimate's going to obliterate this later. But if we look at our Polycount, we're not doing too bad. We're just in local mode, privately talking to this mesh. When it comes back out as brethren, we'll see it and be like, wow, you went in a clone without your own identity and you came out this. So we're just looking at it from the front, just see how our tri-face is going, and so far so good. We are just going to bring a loop in. And maybe something like that. Let us also pinch. And maybe something like that. And we're just pinching it to redefine what we just lost because we had just obliterated that area. Don't think I didn't see that. We just completely destroyed the apex of that chin. So we gotta bring that back. And still just using smooth. However, when it comes to resurfacing something, like for example, if I want to just bring this back to just being a good mesh, one of them good meshes, I just hit it with scrape, which will kind of bring the geometry back to the level I need it to from being an optimized, decimated version of itself. And then we can just use a little bit of pinch just to kind of bring things together. Just really having some fun here, just talking about vanilla blender sculpting on a basic level and just getting in and just sculpting some meshes. So maybe something like that, and let us pound the top a bit as well. Really just stomp this roof And it's looking so far so good. And let us smooth it. You know, if we hit it with scrape, the geometry is basically what I call equalize, which is just it fits whatever's under my brush, making the surface smooth, then allowing me to smooth. But you know, if you make the mistake of trying to smooth it while it's collapsed in nothingness, it's just not going to work. I thought that was collapsed. It's not. Good old scrape, just scraping along. So here's what we're looking at so far with this, and we don't even have to go so far as to destroy all of this because I kind of like it. And also, for the sake of time, we can just keep it this time. So let's see, I'm going to pull this up just to see how this works. Pull this one up as well. Just getting real random with sculpt. You know, whenever I try to bring in teeth, it always works out bad for me, but today I have confidence that we are going to pull it off because the areas leading up to it are just so sparse that we can have all sorts of tech kind of get into this to integrate the design. So just scraping or damming, you know, damming this mesh all to hell. And smoothing, you know, smooth is just my thing. I don't think it's showing on screen what keys I'm holding, but it is really just either scrape or smooth. I mean, you can see my brush over on the side. I'm assuming my wallpaper changed, which caused it to slow down just now. I'm always changing my wallpapers between things that inspire me and things that inspire me. But it just keeps me active throughout the day. You know, whenever I look at my background, I'm like, oh, time to get back to work. You know, if you see your desktop a lot, you're not using your computer right. Your desktop needs to be covered in Windows. And then you need to get more monitors so you can cover those in Windows too. Till you look like NORAD, the American dream. So from here, we are just integrating this area a little bit more. You know, just kind of going for kind of a more shark tooth formation. However, we are going to need to hit it with a big flatten. And I see a plane developing here that I know so late for us to be talking about planes, but when they appear, sometimes you just got to take a plane by the yoke. I think that's how you fly a plane. I don't know. You're not here for flight advice. Flight advice with Master Xeon. Always book your trips with Travelocity. No, I'm kidding. You don't want travel advice from me. I don't go out. So we are just bringing this in. Maybe something like that, and then we can just follow it up with a pinch. You know, as I'm drawing these strokes, I just imagine how it's going to look going forward. To the side, I just see all these possibilities, and then I just opt for one of them. So that one I saw the best opportunity with an early termination on that, because then I could just on this side follow up and create a shape kind of like that and start working it in there. Like something like that. And let us just create a cut. Maybe something like that. And so now we got to think about how we want to deal with this front area, because the way that we have it currently cannot stand. And let us grab this one. We just pinch it. Pinch this area as well. Just really just searching for an area here. But, you know, like I always say, you can really refine this in the refinement process. which doesn't have to be part of your sculpt process. Sometimes it gets harder and harder dealing with polys. So in that regard, you definitely want to save it for the refinement process, where you have the ability to just grab things even more fluidly and have even simpler control, because the geometry is just giving away for you. But this video has gone on for an hour and 15 minutes, so I will at least cut it short here for now. We'll come out of local mode and just look at our results. Here's our 4 culprits, just kind of getting in and warming up with sculpt mode. Like I said, sculpt mode it's one of those things you just learn to love as you get used to it, but definitely get in and give this exercise a try. And with that, I will wrap this video, and I'll see you guys next time.